Hey, tonight we're going somewhere beyond maps, a place you've dreamed of but never named. The island that exists only in dreams. And in its garden waits Antheia, the goddess of quiet blooming. Let's begin. A shore you've visited before. You've been here before, not in waking life, but somewhere between sleep and silence. A place that never shows on maps, and yet you remember the curve of its shoreline, the scent of salt and wildflowers, the hush of waves against forgotten stone. You can't quite place it, but when your head touches the pillow, sometimes it returns. This is the island that drifts in the current of dreams. It does not wait to be found, it waits to be remembered, and in the center of it all, she walks, not a queen, not a warrior, not a storm, but a blooming Antheia whose name means flower, a goddess who never demanded temples, but whispered instead in petals, in pollen, in perfume. They say she was once one of the graces, but then she faded, or maybe she dissolved into every garden you've ever seen in a dream. Tonight, we follow the trail of fragrance and fog to an island the waking world has forgotten, to the myth of a goddess the gods themselves barely recall. And yet, she waits not in marble, not in myth, but in the space between your breaths, where something inside you still grows wild, soft, and entirely unreachable. Close your eyes. We begin. Chapter 1. Who is Antheia? She is not among the loud gods, not etched in lightning or carved in stone. You will not find her leading wars or delivering prophecies. Antheia is the silence after the bloom, the moment a bud opens and no one notices, but everything changes. In old Greek lore, she was one of the chariots, the graces, sisters of joy and beauty and soft gestures, Aglaea, Euphrosyne, and Antheia, the quietest of them all, while her sisters danced and dazzled in laughter. Antheia stayed close to the soil. She did not chase light, she grew toward it. Her name means the blooming one, but she was never about appearances. She was the energy beneath growth, the invisible rhythm in petals opening at dawn, the way a vine curls toward the sun without ever being taught how. She was not celebrated in the great temples, but in every meadow that thrived after the rain, in every forgotten field that bloomed without reason, in the cracks of stone where flowers still dared to rise. Some said she ruled gardens, blossoms, and swamps, but what she really ruled was something older, becoming, not through effort, but through surrender. Antheia is the goddess of what grows without command, of what lives even when no one is watching. You won't hear her voice, but you've felt her, in the scent that stops you mid-step, in the dream where everything is green. In the moment, you almost remember something, and then forget again. To understand Antheia is to understand the part of you that never needed to be told how to live, only allowed. Chapter 2. The Forgotten Island. There are places the gods abandoned, and there are places they never claimed. This island was neither Olympus nor Hades, not sacred, not cursed, just hidden, a place out of reach not by distance, but by waking thought. No map shows it, no sailor recalls it, and yet so many have dreamed of it. An island covered in green so deep it hums, with flowers that bloom only when no one's looking. A place where vines wrap around time, and air smells like memory. They say this is where Antheia went, after the world forgot her name, not in exile, but in rest. She did not fade, she withdrew, not out of anger, but like a flower closing at dusk, like the sea pulling back before a deeper tide. Those who dream deeply enough, those who surrender instead of sleep, sometimes find themselves walking its shore, soft sand, black stones, glowing plants, that recognize your presence. No words, no signs, only remembrance, as if some part of you had always been here, as if this island grows not on earth, but in you. You cannot find the island. You must be found by it when you stop searching. when you forget what time is, when your mind softens like petals soaked in rain. Then, and only then, she appears, the woman in green. Or is it the wind, the one whose footsteps leave blossoms, the one who doesn't ask who you are because she already knows? Chapter 3. The Garden in the Mind. Every person carries a garden, not made of soil, not made of seed, but woven from memory, dream, and longing. It grows in silence, in shadows, in forgotten corners of thought. This is the garden of Antheia. It blooms not in the world, but within the mind, a living symbol, an inner landscape where beauty grows without reason and healing arrives without words. Close your eyes. You may see it. A narrow path winding through moss and mist, branches overhead forming cathedral arches, flowers with no names, yet instantly familiar, water that hums softly with recognition. They are thick with scent lavender, myrrh, memory. This place is not designed. It is remembered. Every grief you've buried becomes a root. Every joy you forgot becomes a leaf. Every hope you left behind becomes a bud waiting to bloom. Antheia does not tend this garden with hands. She does it with stillness. She invites no one, but everyone is welcome, as long as they come without armor. This is where sorrow softens into dew, where anxiety loses its grip in the perfume of jasmine, where the mind becomes earth again, not to be shaped, but to be held. And when you walk this garden in a dream, you are not just walking through plants, you are walking through yourself, through every version of you that grew, that broke, that bloomed again. Antheia does not teach, she shows. She does not preach, she grows, and in her presence, something in you remember show to be soft without being weak, how to open without being unmade. This garden in your mind is not an escape. It is a return to what you were before the world told you how to be. Chapter 4. Antheia and the Language of Flowers. Antheia never raised her voice. She never needed to, because she spoke a language older than words, the language of flowers. Long before alphabets, long before prayers, people looked to petals for meaning, a rose for love, a lily for death, a daisy for hope, each bloom, a message, each scent, a secret carried by the wind. They say Antheia shaped this language, not by inventing it, but by listening. She understood what humans had forgotten, that beauty is a form of communication. Every flower carries intention, not the kind you can write down, but the kind you feel in your bones. The warmth of marigold, the sorrow in forget-me-nots, the wild defiance of poppies growing where they shouldn't. And each dream in which Antheia appears comes with a garden, not always literal. Sometimes it's a child handing you a flower. Sometimes it's petals falling from the ceiling. Sometimes it's a tree blooming in the wrong season. But always a message from her, not to tell you what to do, but to remind you of what you already know. In Victorian times, they called it florography, a code of flowers used to send unspoken emotions. But Antheia's flowers are not coded, they are clear. If only you listen like soil listens to rain. And perhaps that is her gift, to remind us how to feel meaning, not just read it. How to speak without control, how to love without permission. Next time you see a flower in your dream, don't dismiss it. It may be her, still speaking, still blooming. Chapter 5. The Dream Cycle and Her Appearances. Dreams are not random. They are rhythms, echoes of something ancient, pulsing beneath our thoughts. And Antheia moves through them like the scent of blossoms on a breeze, never forceful, always unmistakable. She is not a figure who arrives and speaks. She is a presence, a moment, a feeling just before waking when your heart softens and your mind forgets to resist. In the first cycle of dreams, when the mind is still busy, She waits, but in the deeper stages, when the walls between self and soul dissolve, she comes gently. Sometimes she is a girl planting seeds in your chest, sometimes a vine growing from your hands, sometimes a field that blooms beneath your feet as you walk, and sometimes she is nothing but the color green, or the taste of honeyed air, or the knowing that something is alive inside you and has always been. She rarely speaks in words. If she does, it's often in fragments. Let it grow. You forgot your roots. You are still blooming. Not everything must be useful. These whispers stay with you upon waking. They fade, like dew, but the feeling remains, the ache of recognition, the grief of beauty you almost understood. Antheia is not like gods who break into dreams with thunder. She arrives like a memory you didn't know you had, and when she leaves, you are never quite the same. You may find yourself drawn to wildflowers, to gardens, to softness, to quiet, and though you may not see her again for many nights, she will return, because dreams, like seasons, always circle back, and so does she. She is the bloom in your sleep, the breath of life when you feel most still. Chapter 6. The island beyond the map. Cartographers never found it. Sailors never charted it. Even the myths forgot to mention it by name. And yet you've seen it. Maybe not in sleep, but in the moment before sleep, that fragile edge between, real and remembered, where your body feels heavy, but your mind begins to drift towards something that feels oddly familiar. That is when the island reveals itself, not to the eyes, but to the inner compass, a direction not north or south, but inward. It doesn't exist in geography. It exists in longing, the kind of longing that isn't for a person, but for a place you can't describe. This island does not wait to be discovered. It waits to be remembered. Its shores are not sand, but soft moss. Its skies shift between dusk and dawn, never quite day, never quite night. Time there doesn't move forward. It unfolds, like petals in reverse. You don't age there. You become younger than you've ever been, not in body, but in soul. And at the center of the island is not a palace or a monument, but a garden. Not a perfect one, a wild one, overgrown, untamed, alive. And in that garden walks Antheia. She does not greet you, because on this island nothing is announced. Everything is simply allowed. You may sit, you may cry, you may dig your hands into the dirt and feel it welcome you like home. And if you listen closely, you'll hear the island breathe, not like wind, but like belonging. Here, nothing chases you, nothing expects you. You are not judged, not even healed. You are simply permitted to be, and in a world that constantly asks you to prove, produce, perform, this island becomes a kind of rebellion, a quiet one, a sacred one. It is not a reward. It is not a test. It is a mirror of the life you've neglected to feel, and once you visit it in dream, in stillness, in memory, you carry a seed of it back with you, not in your hands, but in your breath, in the way you soften, in the way you begin to bloom again. Chapter 7. The Archetype of the Dream Garden. Carl Jung wrote that the psyche speaks in images, symbols that rise from the unconscious like seeds breaking through soil, and one of the oldest, most universal symbols is the garden, not the neatly trimmed kind, not manicured, fenced or owned, but the wild garden, a sacred space that exists beyond language, beyond logic, beyond control. And Antheia lives in that archetype, not as a deity to be obeyed, but as a force to be experienced. She is the garden itself, in myth and dream alike. Gardens are not just places of beauty, they are places of transformation. Think of Eden, think of Avalon, think of the secret courtyard you've seen only in sleep. These are not stories, they are mirrors. Because gardens are where the psyche returns to balance, where chaos becomes order, but not through force, through growth. The garden does not rush. It does not strive. It simply unfolds, in rhythm with what it is, and you in your quietest moments, in your truest dreams, are also a garden. And Antheia teaches this not with sermons, but with seasons. She is the part of you that knows how to soften after pain, how to reach for light even in sorrow, how to become beautiful without asking permission. The dream garden is not an escape. It is a remembering of what life felt like before it was named, of what you were before you were explained, in Jungian terms. This is the self, not the mask, not the role, but the deep, blooming center of being, and Antheia is its caretaker, not as gardener, but as invitation. Chapter 8. When the island calls you, you don't choose the island. The island chooses you, not when you're powerful, not when you're wise, but when you're tired, soft, uncertain. The call doesn't sound like thunder. It feels like a breath, a pause in the middle of your day, when something in you whispers, "I want to go home," though you don't know where home is. That's her calling. Antheia's island doesn't need your attention. It waits for your surrender. It calls when you are between things, between chapters, between identities, between the person you were and the one you are not yet brave enough to become. The invitation may come through a dream, or a flower blooming in winter, or a sudden memory that makes no sense of feeling. A scent, a color. It won't be loud. It will be tender, but impossible to ignore. The island calls when you are finally too exhausted to fight, when you stop numbing, when your hands open, when your walls soften, when grief becomes a garden, and silence becomes soil. It doesn't want your effort, only your attention. It doesn't want you to achieve, only to remember. And when you answer, when you sit quietly and say, "I am listening," you'll feel it. The ground beneath your life will shift gently. You will start to see green in everything. You'll crave stillness. You'll cry more easily. You'll speak more slowly. You'll start to bloom, even in brokenness. That's when you know you've heard the island, and somewhere she has heard you back. Chapter 9. The Psychology of Floral Myth. Why do flowers move us? Why can a single petal stir more emotion than 1,000 words? Because flowers are not just decorations. They are symbols alive, ephemeral, and deeply personal. Carl Jung taught that symbols are how the unconscious communicates, and no symbol is as persistent, as gentle, or as evocative as the flower. It is the soul's way of saying, "I'm still here. I still want to grow." In ancient myths, flowers were never random. They marked transformations, deaths, rebirths. Narcissus became one, Hyacinthus too. Persephone's story begins with a bloom, but Antheia's myth is different. She did not become a flower. She became the act of blooming itself. She is the part of the psyche that does not need to be understood, only felt. In dream psychology, a flower can represent a desire finally surfacing, a part of yourself ready to be seen, a grief that softened into something beautiful, a rebirth quiet, private, sacred. Antheia doesn't rush this process. She protects it, like a gardener, guarding a bud from wind, like a dream refusing to explain itself. Her presence reminds us that softness is strength, that beauty isn't weakness, it's a signal, that what blossoms may also wither, and that's not failure. It's the cycle. To engage with Antheia on a psychological level is to say yes to healing that takes time, emotions that have no names, growth that makes no noise. She asks you to notice what's blooming inside, not to harvest it, not to prove it, but to witness it. The flower is not there to be used. It's there to be honored, and so is she. Chapter 10. Return from the Islandiers. Do not leave the island. You carry it, not in your hands, but in your way of seeing, in how you pause before speaking, in how you notice the small things again. A single bloom in a crack of pavement, the softness in a stranger's voice, the dream you don't understand, but still remember. You may wake up with no memory of Antheia's face, no clear vision of the garden, no map to retrace the path, but something will have shifted. You'll feel less rushed, more gentle with yourself. You'll stop trying to force what should unfold. You'll start listening to your inner seasons. This is how her island works. It does not give answers. It grows a different kind of question, one that blooms slowly inside your chest. What if I don't need to be louder? What if I don't need to be harder? What if becoming softer is the real strength? As you return to your life, its tasks, its timelines, its noise, you still carry her gifts. The rhythm of quiet growth, the courage to rest, the trust that blooming cannot be rushed, and sometimes without meaning to. You will bring her into the world, in the way you speak, in the way you hold space for others, in the way you protect the delicate beauty in yourself and around you. Because once you've walked through Antheia's garden, you don't just return to life, you return with roots, with breath, with grace, and the island, that secret place between dream and soul, will always be there, waiting, patient, in bloom. A whisper from the garden. You don't need to earn your softness. You don't need to prove your bloom. You don't need to hurry. You were always meant to grow this way, Antheia.